I did my action research project on the effect of seating changes on distracting behavior. I teach in a sophomore biology class that is a required course for graduation. I had 3 students in the classroom who appeared to be targeted by a distractor, and this was bringing down their grades and their attendance rate. The distracting student was a very low achiever, having less than a 10% score in academic process. He was also on a behavior plan. He had an imminent removal from the classroom was proposed. I was going to use this event in an attempt to make a seating chart change to evaluate if I could have any behavioral changes. The literature that I reviewed addressed many different items. Student's choice versus a teacher's choice made a difference, age groups, academic performance based on placement, the role of gender, academic performance based on attendance rates, and just addressing changes in seating plans in general. When a student chooses a seat in a group setting, like table groups, there are twice as many distractions that occur. When they choose their own seats in individual or traditional setting, there are 3 times as many distractions occurring. When a teacher makes a choice, there is far fewer distractions. The age group of the students has a large impact on seating arrangements. In the younger classrooms in elementary or primary, it's really essential to have traffic patterns laid out and specific action areas in the classroom. As students get older and they do more cooperative learning, it's useful to have table groups. Having your seating plan organized around your teaching style is essential to make a productive learning environment. You can evaluate seat choices based on academic performance. Preferential seating can have a huge impact. Performance in academics can be enhanced from 5 to 27% based on seating arrangements. There's something called a T-zone in seating, where the full front row of a classroom is considered the crossbar of the T, and then a center line going down the center of the classroom from front to back is sort of the statue of the T. That's the T-zone. It is preferential seating. Students in that zone typically have greater than a 10% increase in academic performance. Gender was interesting to read about. It turns out that females tend to be far more territorial of their seat choice and command a presence from that choice. This is interesting when thinking about roles of distractors and their targets in the classroom. You can also evaluate academic performance based on seating because attendance rates change with seating choices. If a student doesn't like where they're sitting, their attendance rate is typically less than those that enjoy where they're sitting, and that has a direct impact on their academic performance. Any change in seating arrangements in the classroom can cause disruption. Everyone needs to bear this in mind when they produce or propose new seating plans. If it's a productive change, things will settle off, and the problematic behavior that might have been set off simply by the change will settle out. The methodology that I used to do my action research project was a change from traditional seating to cooperative group seating. I balanced the table groups based on gender, academic needs, and behavioral tendencies. I faced the distractor away from the targets, and I faced the targets away from the distractor. Here's the design of our traditional seating plan before the seating changes. The front of the classroom is at the bottom. Our distractors in red on the right and the front. One of our ELIP targets, in fact, both of them can be seen on the left-hand side in green. And our child that is on the behavior plan is also a target. It's seen in yellow at the back. We've separated them as much as possible. When we changed to a layout of cooperative learning, then we had all 3 targets facing the left in separate tables, and we had the distractor facing the right. We made it difficult for the targets to interact with each other as well. I used this data collection sheet to make tick marks whenever a distraction occurred. The initiator is shown on the vertical axis, and the recipients are shown on the horizontal axis. I collected data on assignments, participation in assessments when the distractor was present and after the distractor left the room. I totaled them, created percentages, and calculated averages. I did not do any statistical analysis. There was far too little data. The results are shown in the following few slides in both pie charts for percentages and graphically as well. When the distractor was present and included in the dyadic tallies, target number 1 was shown to be the greatest initiator in bright green on this pie chart. Distractor was the dark green. They account for more than 90% of all the distractions in the classroom. Target number 2 and 3 show very little. If I eliminated the distractor from the tallies, but while they were still present, I have the following percentages. Basically, an interaction between distractor number 1, or pardon me, target number 1 and target number 2. Number 3 is attempting to stay out of the fray entirely. After the distractor left the classroom, you can see that the vast majority of the distractions are initiated by target number 1 to lower rates than when the distractor was in the classroom. We can see that when the distractor is present on the left bar, target number 1 does and is involved in many of the distractions. However, when the distractor left the classroom, he is on a par, target number 1, with target number 2, with or without the distractor present. Target number 3 is doing his best to not be involved in the distraction. When the distractor was still present but not included, we can see that target number 1 and number 2 really do show nearly identical patterns of their distractions with each other. In terms of academic performance, I looked at overall percentages of grades, assessment percentages, and the percentage of completed assignments. Overall student grades were reduced greatly in target number 1. A minor reduction was seen in target number 2, and enhanced performance was seen in target number 3. Student grades, when looking at assessments, we really don't see much difference in target number 1. We see a slight reduction in target number 2, and we see an increase in target number 3. In the percentage of completed assignments, we really see why target number 1 had such a reduction in his overall grades. He's simply not turning in his assignments. Target number 2 also had a minor reduction in turning in assignments, which can account for his minor reduction, but target number 3 really shows an enhanced performance in trying to complete his assignment. If I look at the distraction dyads, I'm really surprised that target number 1 was really the initiator for most of the distractions. However, the distractor comes in a very close second. Target number 1 continued being the initiator after the distractor left, but to a much lesser degree. Whether he wasn't as motivated to distract, maybe the distractor was a social outlet for him, we don't know. Target number 2 really showed very little changes. And target number 3 showed improvements in all regards, possibly due to the fact that he had come back from a suspension and that was his motivating factor. In terms of academic progress, target number 1 really does show the greatest effect was simply not turning in his work. His motivation to come to class is greatly reduced now that the distractor has left. We really feel that the social component was a huge element in having him come to class. Target number 2 showed very little changes, though was involved in fewer distractions because the distractor left. Target number 3 showed great increases in academic progress, likely due to coming back from suspension. If I reflect and think back on the design in question involved, I would have gathered baseline data prior to the seating changes, but this was out of my control in this regard because the seating changes were made over semester break. I also would have organized my data by behavior type. I think I would have been more clued in to the fact that target number 1 was such a great distractor if I had thought about the different modes of distracting. They weren't just verbal, that was eye contact, hat tilting, hand gestures. It was really enlightening to sit in the back of the classroom and view all these different behaviors. It's really opened up my eyes as to what distractions are occurring that I'm just not aware of when I'm in the front of the classroom. I also would have collected data on other categories in terms of academic progress, like notebook tests. I think that would have clued me in a little bit more to the day-to-day focus and on-task behavior of the students. I collected attendance rates and compared that before I moved to the distractor left. The literature review for doing this project was very, very useful. I recommend everybody read up on seating plans because it's interesting to note the do's and don'ts and what's appropriate for age groups based on instructional style. Here's the second page of the literature. Thank you.